Think we're live. Thing about these. Looks like there's a delay on this thing. Yeah, because I'm like looking at myself doing things I did like 10 minutes ago. It's kind of creepy. I can see people on here, but it's strange because I can see what I did about 10 seconds ago. So. Yeah, it's supposed to. Okay, whatever. We'll go with it. It never happened like this before. Anyways, welcome. And in today's episode, what I want to talk about was a name that will come across everyone's checklist when they start looking at things like the Illuminati, New World Order, Babylonian Brotherhood, the Freemasons, the Jesuits. Eventually, you come across this name, and that name is Rothschild. And in today's episode, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the timeline of events. We're not going to start at the very beginning because I don't want to start in the 1600s. But we are going to start in the 1700s, late 1700s. We're going to go through the Napoleonic era. And we're going to go through the 1900s so you understand why it is this family is so freaking powerful. It's absolutely mind-boggling the amount of power these people have. Before we do that, I want to talk about, well, actually, what I want to do is I want to go to the President of the United States, a former President of the United States. His name was John F. Kennedy. Oh, need some technical help over here. Oh, it looks like it's working now. Oh, okay. See, that's what happens. So basically, this was probably the most famous man in history who stood up against the Rothschilds. And we all know how that ended, but I want you to hear what he said.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day.
That, my friends, is the New World Order he's discussing. And let me go down the list of what got Mr. Kennedy killed. See, Mr. Kennedy was born in the 29th, had hella charisma, like most people born in the do. Mr. Kennedy was a 7 life path. He was also born in the year of the snake. Smart dude. He could see what was going on. So you see, Mr. Kennedy does something called Executive Order 11110. And Executive Order 11110 did something very specific. It took the power away from the Federal Reserve. It took the power away from the Federal Reserve to be the sole creditor of the United States of America. John F. Kennedy did that. He waited until Executive Order 11110. Again, 2 11s. 2 11s. If you look at the date he signed it on, 6/4/1963, 6/4/1963 adds up to 29. 2 and 9 is 11. So not only was it the Executive Order 011, but he also signed it on an 11 day. Yeah, he knew about numerology. He used it against the Federal Reserve. Unfortunately, the Federal Reserve hit back. And now you understand why Mr. Kennedy was killed 11/22. 11 plus 22 is the only day of the year where you have 2 master numbers. The date. 11/22/33. The day he was assassinated, the next day his replacement signed an executive order canceling Executive Order 11110. So the man who stood up to the Rothschilds Federal Reserve Bank killed. It was all covered up. A lot of it by the Bush family, and that's why they were so powerful. Remember, it happened in Texas. What you have to understand is, when it comes down to the New World Order, no one is above it. Ronald Reagan got shot in 1981. President Reagan. And the reason he got shot, started talking about the Federal Reserve. He wasn't talking about the Federal Reserve after. I promise you that. That was the end of that. What you have to understand is Mr. Kennedy was one of the only people who stood up to him. Now let's go through the timeline of the Rothschilds so we can understand how they became so powerful. We're going to start with Russia. The Tsar of Russia at the time he stood against the Rothschild family before they were actually as powerful as they were. And it took the Rothschilds 100 years. But they got his ancestors, overthrew him, killed him, and replaced him with a Lenin. But before we go there, we got to go here. Napoleon. The French Revolution started in the late 1700s. It happened because the King of France was a moron, but the King of France was sending all his treasure to America so they could fight the British, his arch rival. He sent so much money to America, the French king, that he bankrupted his own nation. Now, America wouldn't have done it without him. There's no doubt about it. So America does owe an internal gratitude to France, which we returned in 1944. Remember, America founded in 1776 in the year of the monkey, freed occupied France from the Nazi Germans in 1944, another monkey year. A little astrology there for you. But going back to the Rothschilds, they started the French Revolution because at that time they wanted to get rid of all the kings and queens. You can't have a new world order if you have a whole bunch of kings and queens running around. So that's what they did. They started with the French one, and they financed Napoleon. Yet when Napoleon actually came to power, he turned on the Rothschilds. If you notice a lot of pictures of Napoleon, you're going to see with his hand like this to his chest, inside. That's a Freemason gesture. Whenever you have a hand inside the coat pocket, that's the way Freemasons talk to each other. You're going to see in a lot of famous paintings, a lot of famous people from Stalin, Lenin, all these guys, Napoleon, Hitler, they all did it. But Hitler can be questioned though. And what happened was when Napoleon actually took power in 1804 and became the emperor, he cut the Rothschilds off. He's like, what do I need them for? But he still needed their money. When he went to war against the British, it was the Rothschilds that were funding him. And they were also funding the other side, the Brits. No matter who wins, the Rothschilds win. The Napoleonic Wars from 1804 to 1815. 11 years. Think about that. 11 years. And they basically reshaped Europe. And at the very end, Napoleon was fighting against the Duke of Wellington in a place called Waterloo. And basically, the French lost. And that was the end of Napoleon. Yet, that one event changed history. And is still one of the main reasons the Rothschilds run this world. You might be asking, what the hell am I talking about? Well, see, back in 1815, they didn't have telephones. They didn't have email. They basically had the Pony Express. And back in England, they didn't know who won the war. So what happened was, when the Rothschilds found out that the Duke of Wellington won, they started telling their people to start selling British stock in London. Why would they do that? Well, you see, the Rothschilds found out a full 24 hours before the British public who actually won the war. Their spies are better than the governments. And when the Rothschilds found out, they instructed all their people to start selling. Well, all the other people started noticing the Rothschilds people selling stock, and they were like, wait a second, they must know something. So they start selling their stock too. All of a sudden, the British stock market, which was the most powerful in the world at the time, fell 80, 90% in a matter of hours. Hours! Then the Rothschilds had someone else buying everything up for pennies on the dollar. The next day, when the British found out they won, the Rothschild stock is worth so much, they own the Bank of England. They set the terms to the Bank of England. And that's why you have the independent city-state of London today. See, you have the city of London, and then you have Greater London. Greater London is what that Rothschild cartel still runs to this day. That was 1815 that happened. The Rothschilds finally got in a nation. The Rothschilds controlled the superpower at that time, England. They controlled their bank. And because the English had tentacles all over the world, the Rothschilds had tentacles all over the world. And they started spreading everywhere. Before, they were just in Europe. Now they started going to Asia, America, all over the world. And it started when Napoleon lost the Battle of Waterloo. So that gives you a little glimpse into where the Rothschilds actually got their power from. Let's move on. The Titanic. Famous movie. You know, it actually happened in real life. There is a plane, there was a big ship called the Titanic. And what happened was, all the richest people in the world went on that ship. And the captain of that ship was a 33rd degree Freemason with instructions. The instructions were to make sure that ship never came back. You see, the Titanic was a hit job. See, in American politics in 1912, There's a man named Mr. Uster. He was the richest man on earth, or at least in America. And he was strong enough to withstand the Rothschilds. Because while the Rothschilds owned Europe and the Bank of England, well, this is the man in America. And the Rothschilds can't simply kill a man like this, because that would start a mob war. See, Mr. Uster here was against something called the Federal Reserve Act. The Federal Reserve is what we have today, a central bank. And Mr. Uster was against it, but the Rothschilds were for it. They basically had the same number of politicians in their pockets, so they couldn't do it. They needed this guy out the way. And they had to do it in a way that seemed very clean. So they all put him on a ship. And then at the last minute, the Morgan family, known Rothschild puppets, the Rockefeller family, known Rothschild, sometimes partners, and a bunch of other rich people got off that ship. But not Mr. Uster. And when he went down with that ship, well, all the money that was opposing the Federal Reserve with all the political scumbags that were working for this guy, well, it dried up, and they joined the other side. The other side was Rothschild. 1912, Titanic sinks. 1913, all of a sudden we have a Federal Reserve. Shocking. Now, if you notice a lot of interesting things about the Federal Reserve. First of all, the president who signed the Federal Reserve Bill into law, Woodrow Wilson, was born on the 28th. This is now the richest bank in the whole world. So, yeah, that worked. The Federal Reserve goes by the 13 system. 12 plus 1. Example. 12 jurors, 1 judge. 12 astrology signs, 1 sun. 12 Federal Reserve banks all across America, from Cleveland to San Francisco, and then the main one in Washington, D.C. They followed the system. 13 is, after all, the number of money. Number of the matrix. M equals 13. Think. So, after the Rothschilds get their bank, and again, the Federal Reserve isn't 100% Rothschild. It basically has some interest with the Rockefeller family, who eventually sold out to the Rothschild family in the year 2000 when J.P. Morgan and Manhattan Chase merged. You have to understand, J.P. Morgan is basically a patsy for the Rothschilds. So the most powerful bank in America, basically patsies. You can say the same thing for Goldman Sachs. By the way, one of Goldman Sachs' founders was born on the 28th as well. So after the Rothschild get their Federal Reserve, now they can start financing wars. And guess what? 1914, World War I started. So you see the cycle of events. From 1912, Titanic sinking, to the Federal Reserve, and then them being able to finance World War I with Federal Reserve money. Step by step by step. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is just a Cliff Notes version of how the Rothschilds have gained their power. The Rothschilds control every single government on this planet to a degree. If you think Donald Trump is not part of Rothschilds or doesn't take orders from the Rothschilds, you're insane. If you think Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, all these other schmucks didn't take orders from the Rothschilds, you are insane. The Rothschilds on 9/11/2001 few days before that, they bought a skyscraper with a balcony directly watching the World Trade Center. They were sitting there watching it happen because they planned the whole thing. This is the most powerful family on earth. Vladimir Putin fears these people. So does the Chinese president. A lot of people don't know this, but Chairman Mao was financed by Zionists. So now that we got World War I, let's move the timeline to World War II. What happened at the very end of World War I was the British were losing to the Germans. The Zionist faction came to England and they told them they will get the United States of America in World War I if they promise to give them Palestine. They did. The U.S. came in, Germany lost. The 1919 Versailles Treaty was very, very rough on Germany. They basically had them pay reparations. There's no way to run an economy and pay the Allies reparations. There's no way to get it done. So basically, the Weimar Republic, which was started in 1919 and ended in 1933 when Hitler took power, they were basically a very, very weak government. You had communists running around, fascists running around, all anarchists, all sorts of people running around in Berlin, because it was basically what you would call today the LGBT capital of Europe back in the 1920s. It was broke. It was poor. The French would go up there to get cheap prostitutes. That's basically what Germany was. 1923, a man by the name of Adolf Hitler came to power with the National Socialist Party. And he started a coup. And he lost. And then he was put on trial. He put on such a good show during the trial. The judges gave him like a year in prison and some basically minimum security camp. With the whole public looking at him now, the Zionists came to him with a deal. The Zionists, which is basically the Rothschild, if you haven't figured it out, the Rothschilds are the Zionists. They went to Hitler and they're like, we will finance you to take over Germany. Why would they do that? Why would Jewish leaders finance Hitler's rise? Why would German leaders finance Hitler's rise? Because they had this land in Palestine they wanted the Jews to go to. But if you're a Jew in the year 1923, you're liking Berlin, you're liking Germany, you still got money, unlike most of the folks there. Why would you want to leave modern technology to go to a desert? Jews ain't about that. But the Rothschilds still needed that getting to go. Because they need Israel. So what happens? The Zionists and Hitler cut a deal. Two people who don't really like each other working together because their goals at that point in history are the same. For Hitler to become the leader of Germany, and then for him to start pressing the Jews. Because when he starts pressing the Jews start going to Palestine. Start understanding what's going on here? Get the herd moving. So, Gary, where's your proof? Proof is always hidden in plain sight. I want you to look at the word Zionist. I'm going to highlight it there for you. Zionist starts with a Z and then it has an I. Hitler has something called the National Socialist Party. Starts with the NA. What happens when you combine NA with the ZI? Oh, let me show you. Nazi. It's in the name itself. So when the Zionists and the National Socialist Party combined and merged, they became the Nazi Party. And all of a sudden, the Rothschilds are now controlling Hitler, the man they put into power. Why would rich Jews want Hitler to go after the Jewish population in Germany? Again, to get him moving to Palestine, which is modern day Israel. So as soon as Hitler came to power, it started getting real tough for Jews in Germany on purpose. They needed to get the herd moving to Israel. Is this starting to make sense to you? Now, I'm Jewish myself. I'm not going to be one here to sit here and tell you that the Holocaust was a hoax. No. Holocaust did happen. But 6 million people did not die. In my estimates, it was 250 to 300,000. Still a lot of people. And I believe a lot of those people died because when the Allies were bombing Germany and all of a sudden the people don't have food, the prisoners are going to be the last people in line to get any crumbs. So I believe that's... I don't believe in the Auschwitz death camps and stuff like that. I do know that some not Nazi SS people did their job with too much joy. But the Holocaust did happen, yet 6 million did not happen. See, Jewish people like the number 6. Let's see why. Look at this star right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. Six million Jews died. See, if you go down the list, what you're going to start finding is the news has been saying this since 1920s. Yet the Holocaust happened in the late 1930s and early 1940s. But look, October 13th, 1869, 1915, 1920. It's always 6 million. It's always 6 million. I wonder if this podcast is going to get banned after this one. Too much truth going on right now, folks. Too much truth going on. But here's the fact. This is what happened. Rothschilds are very, very smart. What people have to understand is Hitler was supposed to lose. Because after the Jews started going to Germany, they didn't need Hitler anymore. And then Hitler was removed. The best thing about Hitler was he's an ox, right? He starts winning all the wars. Everyone thinks this guy's some great hero. Then 1943, his enemy year hits. He loses Stalingrad. He loses Kursk. It's over. 1945, he's dead. Well, actually, he didn't die. He actually went to Argentina, and he died there with Eva Braun in the late 1950s. But that's a story for another day. So now we are all the way to 1945. There's a lot of sympathy in around the world for the Jewish people. And now the state of Israel gets formed. 1948. What the Rothschilds always wanted. They finally got that. Now I want to rewind history a little bit because I skipped one major part. Where do we have it here? The Romanov family. In 1815, right after Napoleon lost, the Rothschilds at that time, they wanted to start a Federal Reserve right then and there. The Bank of Vienna. One person stopped them. The Romanov family in Russia. That's the, for lack of a better word, that's the Illuminati family in Russia, the Romanov family. And the Rothschild, 1815, he told the Romanovs, my ancestors will kill yours. And that's exactly what happened during the Russian Revolution. They financed Hitler. The Russians were weak. They overturned the government. And they killed every member of the Romanov family. Took them 100 years. Took a lot of generations. But they did it because you have to understand, this is how the Rothschilds play. They play for keeps. And everyone with even a little bit of power understands this. I'm going to be dead real with you folks. If anyone thinks I'm talking about overthrowing the Rothschild family, you're talking to the wrong person. It can't be done. It can't be done. They're always going to have their tentacles in whatever government because they have that much power. They don't give a fuck about the money. They print the money. My focus is right there. Stop these bastards. Because that is within our ability. Stopping them is within our ability. Because here's what it comes down to. We cannot change the world and declare war on the Rothschilds. We will lose. What we can do is make the shift from America to China so difficult, so damning, that the Rothschilds decide, let's go with America. Better to deal with the devil you know than the devil you don't. Always remember that. The Rothschilds control Bill Gates. They fund both sides of the war. And they did get something in 1815. They got every country to agree that Switzerland will always be neutral. And because of that, nothing happened to Switzerland in World War I. Nothing happened to Switzerland in World War II. Because from Switzerland, that's where the Rothschilds were funding both sides of the war. So their bank could never be touched. Since then, their base of power is shifted to the Federal Reserve. Now, a lot of people would say the Federal Reserve is economic terrorists, and I would agree with you. Yet, at this point in history, the pariah the Federal Reserve, and the host, the United States of America, are so intertwined that if you take the Federal Reserve down, you take America down. If you kill the cancer, you kill the host. So at this point in time, I'm not even advocating for the overthrow of the Federal Reserve, because I know what will come after it will be a lot more tyrannical. That's just a fact. Every time it gets worse and worse. My point is not to try to overthrow the Fed, and I know they're garbage, but what I'm basically trying to tell you is if you destroy the Fed, you destroy America. And with all our faults, America is still the only shining beacon in the world. It's sad. It's sad to say that with all the faults this country has, but it's the absolute truth. Why? Because Americans have the Second Amendment. We still have guns, and they can only push us so far. When they repeal the Second Amendment, the Rothschilds have won. Until that day, we still got a little check and balance on these people. Moving forward. We're at a stage right now in history where they don't need capitalism anymore. They needed capitalism to build the cities. They needed capitalism to basically expand the infrastructure of the world. Now that that infrastructure is in place, they don't need capitalism anymore. They want to switch everything to communism now. The Rothschilds are behind this. Yet, if we make this process so painful, then we can avert the switch to world communism. What does that entail? That entails changing what America is. Democracy is no longer viable with the enemy like the CCP. They will buy off our politicians. They will steal us our secrets. They will use our weapons against us. We can't go in China and spread propaganda because everything is locked off. They can come in here and spread. They're global times. They can come in here and spread all the propaganda that you want. Do you know the Chinese, about 10 years ago, bought a big television-tron on Times Square, and they spread their propaganda on Times Square. Their money gives them access to our system. Can't fight them with the democracy. Every superpower comes with a choice. Every single one. They either evolve into an empire like Rome, or they start dying off slowly like the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire ruled the world from the 14 to 1700s. Their janissaries were unstoppable. And then Napoleon came in the 1700s and whooped their ass. And at that point, instead of investing in science, at that point, instead of protecting their country for the generations in the future, what do? They started being more corrupt than ever before. And that we have right now with the Democratic Party. I'll give you an example. While Black Lives Matter is funding the Democrats, hundreds of millions of dollars that are going to a white man, Joe Biden, to win the election. While the Democrats are using Black Lives Matter for that, they are also telling you they want 11 million illegal aliens to get citizenship. Who's that going to hurt? Black people. Do you understand what they're doing? While you're funding money for them, they are actively looking for your replacements. Because they care more about their party than they care about the country. They are selfish. They want to stay in power. If the country does what it needs to do to get out of this, they won't be in power anymore. Same thing the Ottoman Empire did. The Janissaries were the elite fighting force of the Ottoman Empire. They helped destroy and rule the world for 300 years. And then they started getting corrupt. And as the corruption piled up, the empire started falling until it finally did after World War I. But yet, America has a different route to take. The one Rome did. When the empire was falling apart because the senators were corrupt as hell, a man by the name of Augustus Caesar, the blood relative of Julius Caesar, took all those Roman corrupt senators, put them in jail or killed them, and then turned the republic into an empire. And under his rule, Rome was the most powerful it ever had become. This was not an empire like Hitler or a dictator like Stalin. This was a benevolent leader who cared more about the good of Rome than what the hell his bank account looked like. So America's at a crossroads right now. They're either going to go the way of the Ottoman Empire into more and more corruption until they eventually fall, and this plague, these Nazis of the 21st century take over, or America goes the way of Rome, evolves from a democracy to an empire, where America, Canada, Greenland all merge together and form the North American Empire. After that, you empower regional powers to rule in your name. Japan in Asia, Brazil in South America, India, South Africa in Africa, Nigeria in Northern Africa. You empower other countries to start doing it the right way. And it will not be perfect, and it will not be a utopia. I'm not going to lie to you. But what it will be is civil, with the power for everyone, regardless of race, to succeed. And that's all we can ask for. Because the Rothschilds are not going away. The Rothschilds are not going to give up their power. Only thing we can do is pick the devil we know, America, over the one we don't. the CCP. If they start ruling the world in the Rothschilds' name, the whole world will be a gulag. There will be concentration camps all over the world. There will be no rule. There will be no law and order. The only thing that will matter is what the CCP tells you. That is not a world I want for my grandkids or kids. The real battle in this world is not good versus evil. It's evil versus lesser evil. And I will choose lesser evil every single time. Today, you got a little history about the Rothschilds, what they are, how they came to power, and how they hold power. They will not teach you this in school. They will not teach you this on the streets. This is stuff that I've learned through 20 years of digging through this stuff. From the Titanic being a hit job to the Federal Reserve financing everything single war since. The Rothschilds are just too powerful to do anything about. But what me, you, and everyone in the world can do is make sure America stays the dominant force. Because if that happens, at least we know there's going to be some good that comes in the world. Because no matter what anyone says, America has been the biggest giver of prosperity in mankind, regardless of a person's race. Anyways, in future episodes, we will be talking about cultural Marxism. We're going to take it back to numerology, even though I throw a little numerology and astrology here and there. We will have a podcast where I do strictly numerology and astrology. We'll have that in the future. And as always, remember, the strong take from the weak, but the smart, the Rothschilds, they take from the strong. Peace.
Did you want to talk to chat?